There are rock stars who become legends, and then there are rock stars who become institutions. Gene Simmons. Bornheim was on August 25, 1949, in Haifa, Israel, raised in poverty on the streets of Queens, New York, has spent 5 decades being both simultaneously. He is a fire-breathing, blood-spitting, 7-inch tongue-wagging demon of Kiss, one of the most commercially successful rock bands in history, with over 100 million albums sold worldwide. He is also a businessman, a reality television personality, a restaurateur, a provocateur, and a man who has never in his life met a controversy he wasn't willing to wade into with both boots on. But in the closing months of 2025 and into 2026, the headlines surrounding Gene Simmons have taken on a weight and a complexity that his usual bluster cannot quite contain. The death of a bandmate, a bittersweet national honor, a string of public controversies, and a quiet reckoning of a man approaching 77 years old with a legacy that is both extraordinary and genuinely complicated. All of it has broken into the public conversation at once. Here is what is actually happening, why it matters, and what it tells us about one of rock and roll's most enduring and contradictory figures. To understand where Gene Simmons stands in 2025, you have to start with October 16th, because that is the date that changed everything else. On that morning, Ace Frehley, the founding lead guitarist of Kiss, the man who painted himself as a space ace and whose guitar playing defined the sonic identity of one of the most visually and commercially spectacular bands in rock history, died at the age of 74. The Morris County Medical Examiner's office ruled the cause of death as blunt trauma injuries to the head resulting from a fall. The manner of death was ruled accidental. Frehley had been hospitalized in early October after falling in his New Jersey home studio, and had been placed briefly on life support before his family made a decision that the situation was irreversible. He died surrounded by family. Peter Criss, Kiss's founding drummer and the only other surviving original member, was present at the end as well. Gene Simmons' public response came immediately on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and it was, in its way, characteristic of everything that makes him simultaneously admirable and infuriating. He wrote, "Our hearts are broken. Ace has passed on. No one can touch Ace's legacy. I know he loved the fans. He told me many times. Sadder still, Ace didn't live long enough to be honored at the Kennedy Center Honors event in December. Ace was eternal rock soldier. Long may his legacy live on." The tribute was genuine, the grief in it real. But the sentences that followed in subsequent interviews were the ones that generated controversy, because Gene Simmons is constitutionally incapable of saying only the easy thing when the harder thing is also, in his view, the true one. Speaking to the New York Post in an interview published on December 6th, the day before the Kennedy Center Honors ceremony, Simmons linked Frehley's death directly to his long-time struggles with substance abuse. He said, "He refused advice from people that cared about him, including yours truly, to try to change his lifestyle. In and out of bad decisions. Falling down the stairs, I'm not a doctor, doesn't kill you. There may have been other issues, and it breaks my heart." He added, "The saddest thing, you reap what you shall sow, unfortunately." The remarks drew immediate and divided reaction. Some fans and commentators found them needlessly harsh about a man barely 2 months dead. Others acknowledged that Simmons had spent years warning Frehley about exactly this, and that the frustration in his words came from genuine sorrow rather than cruelty. As documented extensively in Kiss biographies, including Ken Sharp and Paul Stanley's Nothing to Lose, The Making of Kiss, Frehley's addiction issues have been a source of tension within the band since the late 1970s, contributing directly to his first departure from the group in 1982 and the difficulties that plagued their subsequent reunions. What Simmons also said, and what was reported by People magazine and Entertainment Weekly, was perhaps the most emotionally unguarded statement he has made in public in years. Saddest of all, perhaps, is that Ace just couldn't stay alive long enough to sit there proudly at the Kennedy Center and listen to, I can't even tell you who's going to come out, really impressive people, just to say how much Kiss meant to them. He should have at least stayed alive just that long, to be there with his family and stuff. It's heartbreaking. The 2025 Kennedy Center Honors, held on December 7th at the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., represented arguably the most significant institutional recognition Kiss has ever received. President Donald Trump announced the honorees in August, and Kiss was named alongside George Strait, Sylvester Stallone, Michael Crawford, and Gloria Gaynor. Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Peter Criss attended the ceremony in black tuxedos, wearing their medals, united in grief and in the complex pride and occasion that should have included 4 chairs and did not. Simmons had committed, weeks earlier at a charity event reported by Blabbermouth, that one of the 4 chairs at the ceremony would be left empty with Ace Frehley's name on it. In Ace's memory, we're going to make sure one of the 4 chairs is empty with Ace's name, because he deserves to be there in spirit, even if he can't be there physically, he said. That gesture was carried through. Frehley was represented at the ceremony by his daughter, Monique Frehley, who received her father's medal from President Trump alongside the 3 surviving members. The KISS social media channels posted a statement following the ceremony that read in part, "This honor would not be possible without the irreplaceable contributions of our founding partner, Ace Frehley. Knowing how much this award meant to him, we celebrate this milestone as we mourn his loss." The Kennedy Center honor also carried a political dimension that the internet was not slow to identify. Just a few years earlier, Gene Simmons had spoken bluntly and publicly about Donald Trump in terms that were anything but celebratory. He had used words including abhorrent in describing Trump's behavior and, in the aftermath of January 6, 2021, made statements comparing Trump's political rise to forces of darkness emerging from the walls. Now he was shaking hands with the same man in the Oval Office on December 6, one day before the ceremony, accepting an honor announced by his administration. Simmons's response to questions about this apparent tension was characteristically direct. He told reporters at the ceremony that he had known Trump for decades personally and that the honor was about KISS's legacy, not about politics. The internet generated its share of memes and commentary about the contradiction. Simmons did not appear to lose much sleep over any of it. The death of Ace Frehley did not arrive in a vacuum. The history between Frehley and Simmons across 5 decades of partnership, estrangement, reunion, and re-estrangement is one of the most documented and publicly complicated relationships in rock history. Frehley was fired or quit, depending on whose account you accept. The first time in 1982, following years of escalating substance abuse that Simmons has consistently described in interviews as making reliable collaboration impossible. Frehley returned for the massively successful 1996 reunion tour, which according to Billboard and multiple industry sources generated $143 million across 92 shows in 75 cities. He departed again in 2002. The personal relationship between Frehley and Simmons in the years since have been characterized by intermittent communication, public criticism flowing in both directions, and a particular exhaustion of 2 people who cannot quite be in each other's lives and cannot quite be entirely out of them either. What Simmons said at Ace Frehley's private funeral on October 22nd, reported by Brave Words and confirmed by multiple outlets, was a window into how much the loss actually cost him beneath the bluster. He told reporters afterward, "No matter how emotional it was, the open casket was just too much. I had to put my head down. That is not the language of a man performing grief for an audience. That is a person confronting the reality of losing someone who was, whatever complexities, a foundational part of his life." The 4 original members of KISS created something together in a rehearsal loft in New York City in 1973 that none of them could have created alone. And that fact does not dissolve with estrangement or argument or the passage of difficult years. Even amid the grief and the institutional recognition and the political controversy, Gene Simmons remains, at 76 years old, one of the most aggressively active figures in rock and roll commerce. His solo touring operation continued throughout 2025, with Simmons performing without the full KISS production apparatus and telling stories from his 50-year career alongside a set of classic material. A VIP fan experience package priced at over $12,000, which offered fans the opportunity to serve as Simmons' roadie for the day, assist with sound check, eat backstage, and be introduced on stage while receiving a signed bass guitar, generated significant criticism when it was announced. Critics described it as tone-deaf given the economic conditions facing many fans. The package sold out regardless. Simmons defended it without apology, which is the only mode of defense he has ever employed. Some tour dates were canceled in the spring of 2025 due to lower-than-expected ticket sales at certain venues. a development that generated another round of commentary about whether Simmons' solo enterprise had overestimated its own drawing power outside the full Kiss context. Simmons pushed back on that characterization, telling interviewers that the logistics of solo touring were simply different from the full production model, and that the economics reflected that reality rather than any decline in audience interest. The Kiss brand itself remains extraordinary in its reach. According to multiple industry estimates, the band has licensed its logo and imagery across more than 5,000 products since the 1970s, generating cumulative merchandise revenue that dwarfs most bands' total career earnings from music alone. You can buy Kiss-branded items ranging from guitars to pinball machines to, perhaps most memorably, coffins. The Rock and Brews restaurant chain, co-founded by Simmons and Paul Stanley, operates multiple locations across the United States. Simmons' business interests have made him, by most estimates, one of the wealthiest musicians in the world. Gene Simmons' public conduct in 2024 and 2025 produced headlines that range from the merely uncomfortable to the genuinely serious. His October 2024 appearance on Dancing with the Stars drew widespread criticism after his comments about female dancers focus on their physical appearance in ways that many viewers found inappropriate. A comment about one dancer that went viral for the wrong reasons prompted calls from social media users for ABC to apologize. Simmons stated publicly that he stood by every word he had said, which is consistent with his general approach to criticism but which did not help the optics. The pattern of legal disputes involving allegations from women about Simmons' conduct, including a 2010 lawsuit from an ESPN makeup artist, a 2016 allegation from a dishwasher at his restaurant, and additional claims in 2017, all of which were settled or resolved without formal findings against him, continues to sit in the public record as part of his story. Simmons has consistently denied the substance of these allegations and challenged them legally. They do not go away simply because cases are resolved. His 2025 solo performances at events, including the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, continue to generate divided reactions. Fans who found his storytelling and performance genuinely moving, and critics who felt that the ticket prices and VIP packages represented a kind of extraction from a very community that made his success possible. Both reactions contain elements of truth, which is typical of the Gene Simmons experience. In a CBS Mornings interview in the summer of 2025, when news of Ozzy Osbourne's death broke on July 22nd, Simmons broke down on camera, visibly, genuinely, in the way that people break down when someone they have known for decades is suddenly gone. He spoke about Kiss opening for Black Sabbath in 1975, about Ozzy as what he called a genuinely free soul, about the particular quality of someone whose joy in performing was never manufactured. He revealed that Kiss had once turned down a touring opportunity with Black Sabbath during the band's peak years in the 1970s specifically because of the drug culture surrounding Sabbath's operation, and that Simmons had made that call on the grounds protecting the band's image and, implicitly, the people in it. The revelation surprised many fans who had assumed that Kiss and Sabbath were the same world in every respect. The grief in his face was unperformed. That is perhaps the most consistently overlooked truth about Gene Simmons. He is a man whose mother, Flora Klein, survived Nazi concentration camps as a 14-year-old girl, picking potatoes in fields while soldiers stood guard, watching her world disappear around her. She immigrated to Israel, then to the United States, raised her son alone in a cramped apartment in Queens, working 15-hour days in Brooklyn factories, so that the boy who would become the demon could have the stability to dream large. She passed away on December 5, 2018, at the age of 93. Gene Simmons called her his moral compass. Her death, he has said in multiple interviews, was a loss that reorganized everything. The man who claims to have slept with 4,800 women, who trademarked his own name and tried to trademark a hand gesture, who charges $12,000 for a day as his roadie, who said, "You reap what you sow," about a dead bandmate 2 months after his funeral. That man was also a 7-year-old boy who made his first winter coat from an army blanket, who cried himself to sleep in an empty apartment while his mother worked the night shift, who learned English from comic books because he wanted to. Understand the heroes inside them. Those things coexist in the same person. They always have. That is what makes the Gene Simmons story so genuinely difficult to resolve into a single clean narrative, and why the headlines it keeps generating refuse to be simple. Sources: New York Post interview with Gene Simmons, December 6, 2025. Entertainment Weekly, People Magazine, Billboard, Blabbermouth confirmed reports, Brave Words, Rockseller Magazine, TV Insider, Morris County Medical Examiner's Office official ruling, Kennedy Center Honors official records, December 7, 2025. Kiss official social media statements. Ken Sharp and Paul Stanley, Nothing to Lose. The Making of Kiss, a book / HarperCollins, 2013. Gene Simmons, Kiss and Makeup, Crown Publishers. 2001, CBS Mornings Broadcast Records.